The glass doors of Daehan Innovations glimmered beneath Seoul's morning sun like mirrors of truth. Annabel Okafor stood before them, nerves tightening in her chest. 11 years had passed since she last saw Kang Ji-seon, the man who had once been her best friend, her secret heartbreak, and, though he didn't yet know it, her daughter's father. Beside her, 10-year-old Era squeezed her hand. "Mama, why is everyone staring?" she whispered, wide-eyed at the marble lobby and glittering chandeliers. "Because they've never seen confidence walk in brown skin," Annabel said softly. "Stand tall, my love. We belong here." She approached the reception desk. "We're here to see CEO Kang Ji-seon." The young receptionist blinked. "Do you have an appointment?" "Tell him Annabel Okafor is here," she replied evenly. "He'll want to see me." The woman hesitated, murmured into her headset, then froze. Across the lobby, an elevator chimed. Kang Ji-seon stepped out, phone pressed to his ear, voice crisp with authority. The world seemed to tilt for Annabel. Gone was the boy who'd shared instant noodles and laughter at midnight study sessions in London. In his place stood a man in a tailored charcoal suit, Daehan's youngest CEO, flawless, distant, unshakable. "Father," Era's voice rang out. Time fractured. The phone slipped from Ji-seon's hand, hitting the marble with a crack that echoed through the lobby. His gaze shifted to the little girl, the same sharp eyes, the same stubborn jawline, and then to Annabel. "No," he breathed. "It can't be. Welcome to Munlyt Stories, where Munlyt meets myth. Love timeless tales. Then hit like, subscribe. Please tell us where you are watching from in the comment, and join the circle. Every story begins with you." Era bowed politely. "Hello, father. My name is Kang, Era. I'm 10 years old." She smiled bravely. "I've waited a long time to meet you." Ji-seon staggered backward, one hand gripping the wall. "Conference room." "Now," he ordered. The elevator ride was suffocating. Reflections surrounded them, 3 faces bound by blood and silence. "Mama, is he angry?" Era whispered. "In English, darling," Annabel said gently. "And no, he's just surprised." But her heart knew better. The man she once loved looked terrified, of truth, of memories, of the night that had rewritten both their lives. When the doors opened, Seoul's skyline stretched before them, bright and merciless. Ji-seon's voice broke the quiet. "How old is she?" 10, Annabel replied. "She'll be 11 in March." 11 months after that drunken night when friendship blurred into something they could never take back. Ji-seon's jaw clenched. "Why now?" Annabel met his eyes. "Because she asked who her father was, and I decided to stop lying, to her and to myself." The silence that followed was heavier than any accusation. Outside the glass, the city glowed. Inside, 3 lives had just collided with destiny. Rain drummed softly against the windows of the small London apartment Annabel and Ji-seon shared as university housemates. The heater had broken again, and they huddled on the couch under a patchwork blanket, half studying, half laughing at each other's exhaustion. Annabel closed her laptop. "I swear if I see one more anatomy diagram, my brain will file for divorce." Ji-seon chuckled, setting down his finance textbook. "And yet, you still top every exam. How do you do that?" "Fear of failure," she teased. "What's your secret?" He smiled faintly. "Fear of disappointing my father." The air shifted, that quiet moment when jokes fade and something truer slips through. She looked at him, really looked. His eyes, the way he always carried the weight of expectations he never asked for. "You know," Annabel said softly, "you don't always have to be perfect, Ji-seon." "And you don't always have to be strong," he replied, his voice gentle. For a second, neither spoke. The rain filled the silence. Then Ji-seon stood and poured 2 glasses of cheap wine from the corner table. "To surviving finals," he said. She raised her glass. "To friendship." But when their eyes met over the rims, the word friendship suddenly felt too small. They laughed too loudly, drank too fast, and memories blurred with the taste of wine and the comfort of someone who had always been safe, until safety dissolved into something reckless and real. She remembered his breath, warm with hesitation. "Annabel, maybe we shouldn't." "Then stop," she'd whispered. He didn't. The night melted into soft gasps, apologies, and unspoken longing. When morning came, sunlight spilled through thin curtains like judgment. Ji-seon was the first to wake. He watched her sleeping beside him, hair tangled, face peaceful. Something in him stirred, fear, maybe, or wonder. He reached out, almost touched her cheek, then stopped himself. When Annabel woke, he was gone. No note, no message. Just the quiet hum of London buses outside and the bitter taste of regret. She told herself it was just a mistake. Two best friends lost in a storm of emotions. But when her period never came, reality hit harder than any heartbreak. She dialed his number. It rang once, twice, then went straight to voicemail. Days passed, then weeks. When she finally gathered the courage to visit his dorm, she found the room empty. Ji-seon had left for Seoul without a goodbye. Annabel stood in the corridor, clutching the small pregnancy test in her pocket. Positive. She whispered his name, the one she had once said in laughter, now soaked in disbelief. Kang, Ji-seon, what have we done? London's winter sky was a cruel gray when Annabel stood before the front gates of the Kang family townhouse. She had rehearsed what she would say 100 times on the bus ride. There, explanations, apologies, questions, but as the guard looked her up and down, every word vanished from her throat. Miss, you are, he asked curtly. Annabel Okafor, she said, clutching her bag tightly. I need to speak with Ji-seon. The man frowned. Mr. Kang returned to Korea 2 weeks ago. Her heart stuttered. No, that can't be right. He was supposed to. Before she could finish, the heavy iron gates opened. A sleek black car rolled in. Inside sat a woman with perfect posture and the kind of cold beauty only wealth could refine. Madame Kang Hygiene, Ji-seon's mother. The woman stepped out slowly, her fur coat brushing against the frost. You must be Annabel, she said in flawless English. I was told you might come. Annabel swallowed hard. Where is Ji-seon? In Seoul, where he belongs. The words struck like ice. Annabel took a step forward. Please, I just need to talk to him. He doesn't know. Oh, he knows. Madame Kang cut in smoothly. He knows enough to stay away. Confusion tangled with panic. Stay away. From what? From you, she said simply, her gaze sweeping over Annabel's worn coat. My son has responsibilities. You were a distraction. Annabel's chest tightened. I'm pregnant, she blurted. For the first time, something flickered in Madame Kang's eyes. Shock, quickly replaced by calculation. After a pause, she opened her designer purse and pulled out a white envelope. Here, she said, 50,000 pounds. Enough to take care of the problem and yourself. Annabel stared at the envelope as if it were poison. Take care of the problem? Yes, the older woman said coldly. End it. Quietly. We'll all pretend this never happened. Tears stung Annabel's eyes, but her voice remained steady. He loved me. Madame Kang gave a small, pitying smile. My dear, men say many things in the dark. The driver opened the car door. She turned to leave but paused. You seem like a smart girl. Don't ruin your future chasing something that was never meant for you. The car glided away, leaving Annabel in the freezing wind. She looked down at the envelope in her hand, then tore it open. The bills fluttered into the snow like dead leaves. Her fingers trembled as she whispered, You can buy silence, Madame Kang, but not my child. And as snow fell over London, she made the choice that would change everything, to keep the baby and raise her alone. The morning sun crept through the penthouse blinds of Kang Daeho Group Tower, washing the marble floor in pale gold. Kang Ji-seon had been back in Seoul for almost a year, but London's rain still lived somewhere behind his ribs. Work, investors, and endless headlines about the youngest CEO in Daehan's history kept him moving, but not whole. He had tried to forget Annabel Okafor, his best friend, his mistake, his memory. But forgetting her was like trying to erase color from light. One morning, as he prepared for a board meeting, his assistant hurried in holding a worn brown envelope. Sir, this arrived through international forwarding, she said. No return address. It's dated 11 years ago. Ji-seon frowned. 11 years. He turned the envelope over. Faded postmarks read London Heathrow, Seoul. His pulse slowed. He tore it open carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper, creased from travel and time. Her handwriting. He would recognize it anywhere. Neat, confident, looping at the edges. Ji-seon, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I tried to reach you, but your number changed. I even went to your house, but your mother said everything I needed to hear. I'm not writing to beg. I'm writing because something beautiful came from the night we both lost control. I'm pregnant. Don't worry, I won't destroy your life. I'll take care of the baby. I just wanted you to know you're going to be a father. If someday you remember me, remember that I never wanted your money, only your honesty. Annabel. His breath caught somewhere between shock and agony. The world tilted. He dropped into the leather chair behind him, staring at the letter as if it might dissolve. Pregnant, he whispered. No, that can't. But it explained everything. The night, her silence, the pain he never understood. He ran a trembling hand through his hair, then reached for his phone, dialing the London number he'd once known by heart. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. His assistant knocked lightly. Sir, the board is waiting. He folded the letter carefully, sliding it into his inner pocket, over his heart. Cancel my morning, he said quietly. When the door closed, Ji-seon pressed his forehead to the glass window, watching Seoul's skyline shimmer below. He thought of Annabel alone in a foreign city, and the life that could have been theirs. A decade later, he would still keep that letter, worn at the edges, the ink faded, the only proof that once he'd been loved before ambition swallowed him whole. The plane touched down at Incheon International Airport, its wheels kissing the runway with a hiss of mist. For Annabel Okafor, every vibration of the landing gear felt like a heartbeat, loud, anxious, alive. She glanced at her daughter, Era, who pressed her small face against the oval window. Is this Korea? Annabel smiled softly. Yes, my love. Your other home. Era's eyes gleamed. Do you think Appa likes chocolate bread? I bought some for him. Annabel's chest tightened. Maybe, she said. But remember, we're not here for him. We're here for your school and my new job, okay? Era nodded but didn't look convinced. She was too perceptive, too curious, the perfect blend of both her parents. Outside the terminal, Seoul's skyline stretched like a glittering mosaic of ambition and memory. Towering glass, endless cars, neon signs flickering through the drizzle. Everything was sharper, faster, colder than she remembered. It had been 10 years since she'd left London with nothing but a baby and determination. She had built a quiet life, nursing shifts, night classes, birthday cakes on plastic plates. But Korea called her back in the most unexpected way, a medical fellowship offer from Daehan Medical Foundation, ironically, funded by the very empire Ji-seon now led. As the taxi drove through Gangnam, Annabel pressed her fingers against the window, watching the rain smear the city lights. So much has changed, she murmured. Era leaned her head against her shoulder. Mama, will we meet him? Annabel hesitated. If fate wants us to, maybe. Era grinned sleepily. Then I'll tell fate to hurry up. That night, in their small apartment overlooking the Han River, Annabel unpacked. Among her files was an invitation envelope with the Daehan logo. Orientation for all new medical consultants, Daehan Innovations headquarters. She froze. The same building she had sworn she would never step into. The next morning arrived too quickly. Annabel dressed in a beige coat and cream scarf, her nerves disguised beneath calm elegance. Era insisted on coming along before school. Mama, if I see him, I'll say hi first, she said proudly. Annabel laughed softly. You're brave. As they stepped into Daehan Tower, memories collided with reality. The marble, the hush of elevators, the smell of cologne and ambition, it was all the same. The receptionist greeted her politely, then frowned at her name tag. Okafor, please wait one moment. Annabel turned just as the elevator doors opened. Kang Ji-seon stepped out, tall and poised, phone in hand, his voice familiar even after all these years. He looked up. Their eyes met. The world, again, stopped. For a long second, Kang Ji-seon forgot how to breathe. The busy hum of the lobby melted into a dull roar behind him. All he could see was Annabel, her familiar eyes, her calm defiance, and beside her, the child who looked heartbreakingly like him. He took an involuntary step forward. Annabel! Her voice was soft, careful. Hello, Ji-seon. It wasn't anger that burned in his chest, it was disbelief. A decade of wondering, of guilt, and she was suddenly here, standing under the same ceiling where his empire thrived. "What are you doing here?" he asked, the words sharper than he intended. Annabel squared her shoulders. "Working. I was invited to join the Daehan Medical Foundation's clinical research team." "You work for me," he whispered, as if the idea itself was offensive. "No," she said evenly. "For your foundation. There's a difference." His jaw tightened. "And the child?" Era blinked up at him with polite curiosity. "Good morning, sir," she said in fluent Korean. "I'm Era. I'm 10. Her Korean was perfect, her smile confident, yet familiar in the way that twisted something deep inside him. "Conference room," Ji-seon muttered, his tone low. "Now." Annabel followed, calm on the surface but trembling inside. She hadn't planned for this. Not yet. The glass doors closed behind them with a soft hiss. Seoul's skyline shimmered beyond the windows. He turned to face her. "You should have told me." "I tried," she said. "But your mother met me first." He blinked. "My mother!" Annabel's voice stayed calm, but her eyes glistened. "She found me before I could find you. She said you knew. She said you wanted nothing to do with us." His expression faltered. "That's not true." "Then where were you, Ji-seon?" Her voice rose, finally cracking. "When I called, when I wrote, when I stood outside your gate in London. You disappeared without a word." "I didn't know," he said quietly. "I left because I thought I'd ruined everything between us. You were my best friend, Annabel. I didn't know how to face you." Annabel laughed bitterly. "So you ran away and left me to raise your daughter alone. That's poetic." Silence stretched. Ji-seon's eyes moved to Era through the glass wall outside the boardroom. The child sat in the waiting area, swinging her legs, humming softly to herself. "She's really mine," he whispered. "She's yours," Annabel said. "But don't flatter yourself, she's also mine. And I won't let her be hurt by your family's pride again." Ji-seon's voice softened. "I never stopped thinking about you." Annabel turned toward the door. "Then you should have tried harder." She stepped out, leaving him staring at his reflection in the glass, the image of a powerful man undone by the one truth he could never buy back. By noon the next day, the walls of Daehan Tower were humming. In Seoul's corporate world, gossip was currency, and the story of a mysterious black woman seen entering the CEO's private boardroom with a child had become a wildfire. "She's from London, they say," one employee whispered in the elevator. "Did you see the child?" "She looks like him," another murmured. "Impossible," said a third. "The CEO doesn't even date publicly." Annabel walked through the corridor with quiet composure, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor. But inside, her stomach churned. She had expected awkwardness, not headlines. Her phone buzzed. A text from a colleague. "Are you the woman everyone's talking about?" She sighed and turned to face down. Meanwhile, Ji-seon sat in his corner office staring at the skyline, but all he could see was Era's face. Her eyes. Her smile. The truth he'd buried. When his assistant entered, he barely noticed. "Sir, the PR department wants to know how to respond to the rumors." "Rumors?" he asked coldly. The assistant hesitated. "Social media has picked up photos. You and the woman from yesterday. They're saying she's a former lover. Some are calling the child your daughter." Ji-seon's breath stilled. "Handle it quietly." He leaned back, closing his eyes. The weight of his mother's voice echoed from the past. Erase this mistake. He had obeyed her once. He wouldn't again. That evening, Annabel sat in her small apartment overlooking the Han River, helping Era with homework when a sharp knock sounded at the door. She opened it to find Madame Kang standing there, perfectly dressed, her expression like polished steel. Annabel's breath caught. "How did you?" "I have resources, Miss Okafor," the older woman said coldly. "And I see you've brought your situation to Seoul." Era peeked from behind her mother. "Hello," she said shyly in Korean. Madame Kang's gaze didn't soften. "So this is the child." Annabel stepped protectively forward. "If you came here to insult us, leave." "I came to protect my son's reputation," Madame Kang snapped. "End this nonsense before the press learns who she is." Annabel's calm cracked. "You still care more about reputation than truth." "She's your granddaughter." "Don't use that word," Madame Kang hissed. My granddaughter will never be an embarrassment. Era's small voice trembled. I'm not an embarrassment. The silence that followed was deafening. Annabel knelt beside her daughter, eyes fierce. No, you're not, baby. You're brave and you're loved. When Annabel looked up, Madame Kang's face had hardened completely. I warned you once in London. I won't be so polite next time. The door closed behind her, leaving the scent of expensive perfume and old cruelty hanging in the air. Annabel pulled Era close. This time, she whispered, we fight back. By the next morning, the Daehan Tower lobby was flooded with flashing cameras and murmuring reporters. Headlines screamed across digital screens. Daehan CEO's secret family? Black woman, mixed-race child spark corporate storm. Inside his office, Kang Ji-seon stood motionless, the newspaper trembling in his hand. His assistant spoke carefully. Sir, the board has called an emergency meeting. They demand a public statement. He didn't answer. He could still hear Annabel's voice from years ago. I don't need your money. I needed your honesty. When the intercom buzzed again, he snapped back to reality. Prepare the press hall, he ordered. If there's going to be a story, they'll hear it from me. At the same time, Annabel sat at her apartment table, scrolling through headlines that twisted her face into gossip. Each photo cut deeper. A stolen shot of her entering Daehan Tower, another of Era holding her hand. Even her daughter's smile had become tabloid fodder. Her phone rang. Ji-seon. She hesitated before answering. Annabel, the media's outside. They won't stop. Then tell them the truth, she said flatly. I'm trying to protect you. You had 11 years to protect us, she replied and ended the call. The press hall at Daehan headquarters filled quickly. Rows of journalists, camera flashes bursting like lightning. Ji-seon stepped onto the stage in a black suit, his face calm but his hands trembling slightly behind the podium. A reporter shouted, Mr. Kang, is it true you have a child with a foreign woman? Another followed. Are the rumors about a hidden relationship accurate? He exhaled slowly. 11 years ago, I made choices I regret. There was someone I loved deeply, and a child I didn't know existed until recently. A ripple of gasps crossed the room. She is mine, he continued, voice firm now. And I'll not deny her. Upstairs in a small conference viewing room, Annabel watched the live broadcast with Era beside her. Her heart pounded as she heard his words, not of shame, but acknowledgement. Mama, Era whispered, eyes wide. He said I'm his? Annabel's throat tightened. Yes, baby. He did. At the podium, Ji-seon looked straight into the cameras, as if speaking to her alone. Whatever happens next, he said, Daehan will stand on truth, not fear. And so will I. Outside, as the press erupted into chaos, Madame Kang watched the broadcast from her mansion, her glass of wine trembling in her hand. Foolish boy, she muttered. You've just declared war on your own family. The air inside Daehan Tower felt heavier the morning after the press conference. Executives avoided eye contact. Employees whispered in corners. Stock prices blinked red across the monitors like open wounds. Kang Ji-seon stood before the long mahogany boardroom table, a dozen gray-haired men staring at him as though he detonated a bomb in their empire. Do you understand what you've done? Barked Chairman Yu, the board's senior director. You've humiliated this company. Ji-seon's voice stayed calm. I told the truth. That's not humiliation. Truth doesn't pay investors. Another snapped. Your family's reputation is bleeding into our numbers. He clenched his fists beneath the table. 4 years. Daehan had been his fortress. Now it felt like a cage. This company will recover, he said evenly. But if you think I'll deny my daughter for profit, you misjudged me. The room erupted in mutters. Chairman Yu leaned forward. Then prepare to lose everything your father built. Ji-seon met his gaze, unflinching. Then I'll build something better. Across town, Annabel and Era stepped out of their apartment into a crowd of flashing cameras. Miss Okafor, is it true you're Daehan's hidden mistress? Is Kang Ji-seon really your child's father? Are you trying to claim his fortune? Annabel shielded Era with her arm as microphones pushed close. Enough, she said, voice trembling but firm. I am not his mistress. I am a mother. Security guards finally broke through the chaos, guiding them into a car. Inside, Era wiped her eyes. Mama, why do they hate us? Annabel hugged her tightly. They don't know better yet, but they will. That evening, Madame Kang stormed into Ji-seon's penthouse. How dare you do this publicly? She hissed. You shamed this family in front of the entire nation. He turned from the window. You shamed yourself when you lied to me, Mother. You knew Annabel was pregnant. You hid it. I protected you, she snapped. That woman would have destroyed your future. She was my future, he shouted, the restraint finally breaking. And you took it from me. For the first time, Madame Kang faltered, her voice cracking. You're my son. Everything I did was for yourself, he said quietly. Not me. Not her. Not Era. He walked past her, shoulders heavy but certain. From now on, I decide who my family is. When the door closed behind him, Madame Kang stood alone, trembling, not from anger, but from something she couldn't name fear. Rain fell softly over Mapo District, streaking down the glass of a small apartment where Annabel sat curled on the sofa. The TV murmured in the background, replaying Ji-seon's press conference for the 100th time. He had said the words she never expected to hear. She's mine. And yet, the world still looked at her like a scandal, not a woman who had survived alone. A knock came at the door. Gentle. Hesitant. Annabel froze. When she opened it, Kang Ji-seon stood there. No bodyguards, no suit, no arrogance. Just a man in a soaked white shirt, rain clinging to his hair, eyes tired but sincere. Can I come in? He asked softly. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she stepped aside. Inside, the air was warm, scented with cocoa and soap. A small table was cluttered with homework sheets and colored pencils. On the wall hung a childish drawing, 3 stick figures holding hands, labeled Mama, Mi Appa. Ji-seon's breath caught. She drew that. Yes, Annabel said. Before she ever met you. He smiled faintly, then his voice broke. Annabel, I don't even know where to start. Start with her, she said quietly. Not me. Era peeked from her bedroom door, curiosity glowing in her eyes. Mama, who is? Her sentence stopped mid-word as recognition bloomed. Ji-seon knelt to her level. Hi, he said gently. I'm my father, she finished for him, smiling nervously. I know. You said it on TV. He laughed softly despite the ache in his throat. I guess I did. Do you like chocolate bread? She asked suddenly. I bought some for you. His eyes shimmered. I'd love that. As she ran to the kitchen, Annabel crossed her arms. You shouldn't have come without calling. I couldn't wait, he admitted. Every minute since that conference, I've thought about the years I lost. You can't fix 10 years in one night. I know, he said, meeting her eyes. But I can start by being here now. Era returned with 2 slices of sweetbread, proud as if she baked them herself. She sat between them on the couch, offering one to each. Ji-seon bit into his with a trembling smile. It's perfect. Era grinned. I made it special. Annabel watched quietly, heart torn between resentment and something softer. Hope, maybe. When Era finally went to bed, Ji-seon lingered at the door. Thank you, he said, for not giving up on her or on me. Annabel shook her head. Don't thank me yet. Be consistent. That's how you'll earn her, and maybe, someday, my forgiveness. He nodded slowly. Then I'll start tomorrow. Outside, the rain kept falling, but for the first time in years, it sounded like peace. The next morning, the Kang mansion was quieter than a church before confession. Madame Kang, Hygiene, sat in the solarium surrounded by orchids, her manicured fingers scrolling through endless online headlines. Every news outlet showed the same image, Ji-seon standing proudly at the press podium, declaring the truth she had spent years burying. Her assistant approached nervously. Ma'am, the board demands reassurance. Investors are threatening to pull out unless my son divorces his integrity, she said coldly. They can wait. But her calm was a lie. Beneath the surface, fury roared like a storm. She opened another tab, photos of Annabel and Era being escorted by security the day before. A black woman and a mixed-race child in Seoul's gossip circuit. It was everything she had feared. Scandal, whispers, judgment. Call my lawyer, she said finally. It's time this little fairy tale ends. Meanwhile, in a cafe near the Han River, Annabel sat across from Ji-seon, both avoiding the growing tension between them. "You shouldn't have come here," she said, stirring her tea. "The reporters will follow you." "I don't care," he replied. "I wanted to see how Era's first day back at school went." "She's nervous," Annabel admitted. Some of the kids stared at her. Mixed children still draw attention here. Ji-seon's jaw tightened. "I'll make sure she never feels lesser." "She's a Kang." Annabel's gaze hardened. "She's also an Okafor." "Don't erase that." He nodded, ashamed. "You're right. She's both." Before either could say more, a call buzzed on Annabel's phone. Unknown number. She answered. "Miss Okafor," a woman's formal voice said. "This is Attorney Kim. I represent Madam Kang. We'd like to discuss custody arrangements for the child." Annabel froze. "Custody? You can't be serious." Madam Kang believes it's in the child's best interest to be raised in a more stable environment. "We'll be filing a petition within 48 hours. The line went dead. Ji-seon saw the color drain from Annabel's face. "What happened?" She handed him the phone. "Your mother's trying to take my daughter." His heart sank. "No, she wouldn't." "She would." Annabel cut in. "She's already done worse." He leaned forward. "I'll stop her." "How?" she snapped. "She controls your company, your board, your name. She'll destroy me publicly. Then I'll destroy her influence," Ji-seon said quietly, eyes hardening. "She's about to learn what happens when power underestimates love." Annabel met his gaze, searching for the boy she once trusted. For the first time in years, she almost saw him again. 2 days later, Seoul woke to chaos. The morning news blared across every screen. Kang conglomerate family in legal battle over secret heir. Madam Kang seeks custody of grandchild from foreign mother. Photographers crowded outside Daehan Tower. Social media exploded with speculation, some sympathetic, most cruel. By noon, Annabel couldn't even step outside without microphones appearing like shadows. Inside her apartment, Era sat curled on the couch, clutching her teddy bear. "Mama, am I in trouble?" Annabel knelt in front of her, brushing back her curls. "No, baby, you're not in trouble. Some adults just don't understand how love works." Tears welled in Era's eyes. "Grandma said I should live with her. But I don't want to. I want to stay with you." Annabel forced a smile. "And you will." But her voice broke on the last word. Meanwhile, at the Daehan legal office, Ji-seon stood over a long table covered in documents. Across from him, his lawyer read aloud, "Petition for guardianship, citing moral and cultural concerns." "Moral?" Ji-seon scoffed. "She's attacking Annabel's race and background without saying it outright." The lawyer hesitated. "Madam Kang's influence runs deep, sir. The courts will take her words seriously." "Then we fight harder," Ji-seon said coldly. "Use every resource Daehan has. I want the best legal team in Seoul defending Annabel and Era under my name." The lawyer blinked. "You're siding against your own mother." "I'm siding with truth," he said simply. That night, Ji-seon arrived unannounced at Annabel's apartment again, this time with folders in his hand and exhaustion in his eyes. "You shouldn't be here," she said, but her tone lacked strength. "I have to be," he replied. "My mother's filed for custody. The court date's in 2 weeks." Annabel sank onto the sofa. "I don't have the power or money to fight her. That's why you have me." She looked up, disbelief flickering. "You're willing to go against your own mother?" "I've already done it," he said quietly. "For you. For Era." A long silence settled between them, old pain softening into reluctant partnership. Finally, Annabel whispered, "Why are you really doing this, Ji-seon?" He met her gaze steadily. "Because I failed you once. I won't fail her too." Outside, sirens wailed faintly in the distance, the city alive and different. Inside, 2 people who once broke each other now prepared to fight side by side. For the first time in years, Annabel didn't feel alone. The rain hadn't stopped in days. Seoul seemed to grieve with them, the soft drizzle against glass, the gray sky pressing low over the city. Inside Annabel's apartment, stacks of documents covered the table. Legal statements, school records, hospital files, everything they would need to prove Era's rightful place. Ji-seon sat opposite Annabel, sleeves rolled, tie undone, reading through yet another affidavit. He looked nothing like the composed CEO splashed across news screens, just a man exhausted but determined. Annabel watched him silently. There had been a time when seeing him made her heart race. Now it was more complicated, gratitude mixed with the ache of memories she tried to bury. "You don't have to stay this late," she said quietly. "I do," he replied without looking up. "If I leave, you'll try to handle all this alone. And I know you. You'll skip dinner and keep fighting until you collapse." She frowned, half annoyed, half touched. "Still bossy. Still stubborn," he countered, glancing up with a faint smile. For a brief second, the heaviness between them cracked. Era peeked out from her bedroom, holding her teddy bear. "Appa!" Ji-seon looked up immediately. "Yeah, princess. Can you read me the story tonight?" Annabel started to protest. Bedtime was always their quiet ritual, but Ji-seon nodded softly. "Of course." She watched as Era climbed into her father's lap, handing him her favorite English storybook. His Korean accent turned every word into music, and Era giggled through each mispronunciation. By the time the story ended, she was fast asleep against his chest. Annabel leaned in the doorway, arms folded, heart unexpectedly full. "She trusts you," she whispered when he carried Era to bed. "I don't deserve it," he said, "but I'll spend the rest of my life earning it." Later, as they returned to the table, silence wrapped around them again. The kind that wasn't uncomfortable, just full of unspoken things. Annabel finally spoke. "When this is over, and the court rules in our favor, what happens next?" He hesitated. "I was hoping you'd tell me." She sighed, looking down at the custody papers. "We co-parent. We protect her together. But beyond that, I don't know if we can go back." Ji-seon nodded slowly. "I'm not asking to go back, Annabel. I'm asking for a chance to make things right, wherever that leads." The rain outside grew heavier, a rhythm steady and familiar, like the echo of a friendship that refused to die. And somewhere in that sound, both of them found something they hadn't felt in years. Peace, fragile but real. The morning of the hearing broke clear and cold. Seoul's skyline shimmered under the pale light of early spring, but Annabel barely saw it. Her hands trembled slightly as she buttoned her blazer, the same one she'd worn to her first hospital job interview years ago. "Are you ready?" Ji-seon asked gently from the doorway. He looked impeccable in a navy suit, but there was something raw in his eyes, a quiet fear he couldn't hide. "As ready as I'll ever be," she replied. They drove in silence to the Seoul family court, the world outside their car a blur of reporters and flashing cameras. Era stayed with Ji-seon's assistant in the back seat, clutching her favorite book. "Will Grandma be there?" she asked quietly. "Yes," Annabel said softly. "But remember, you did nothing wrong." "I know," Era said with a brave little nod. "Because love isn't wrong." Her words nearly broke them both. Inside the courtroom, Madame Kang Hygiene sat beside her attorney, the picture of poise. Every inch of her posture screamed money, legacy, and control. Annabel took her seat across from her, feeling the weight of every stare, judges, press, Daehan shareholders. She could almost hear their thoughts. Foreigner, scandal, outsider. The judge adjusted her glasses. "Let's proceed. Madame Kang, your counsel may begin." The lawyer stood. "Your Honor, my client seeks custody on the grounds of stability and environment. The child, though undoubtedly loved by Miss Okafor, has faced media scrutiny and racial prejudice due to the mother's choices. In the Kang household, she would be protected and properly educated." Annabel's chest burned. "Properly educated?" she whispered under her breath. Ji-seon's lawyer rose. "Your Honor, Miss Okafor has provided for this child alone for 10 years. No help, no support, no scandal, until my client's mother forced her back into the public eye. We will present evidence of care, schooling, and emotional stability far exceeding that of the Kang household." Madame Kang's eyes flicked toward her son. "You're truly choosing her over your blood?" Ji-seon met her gaze, his voice steady. "I'm choosing my daughter." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Annabel's lawyer handed the judge a folder of records, school certificates, doctor's reports, photos, every birthday, every milestone. "Your Honor, this child doesn't need wealth. She already has love." The judge studied the documents for a long, silent moment before finally speaking. The court will reconvene in 48 hours for a final verdict. Outside, the crowd erupted with questions, cameras flashing like lightning. Annabel turned to Ji-seon. She won't stop, you know. He nodded grimly. Then neither will we. 2 days later, Seoul seemed to hold its breath. Outside family court, reporters formed a human wall, microphones poised like spears, waiting for blood or redemption. Inside, the courtroom was hushed except for the faint ticking of the clock above the judge's bench. Annabel sat beside Ji-seon, her hands clasped so tightly they hurt. Across the aisle, Madame Kang sat regal and cold, her lawyer whispering last-minute reassurances. When the judge entered, everyone rose. "Be seated," came the calm voice that could decide the fate of 3 generations. The judge opened her folder. After reviewing all evidence, testimony, and statements, the court finds that both biological parents, Miss Annabel Okafor and Mr. Kang Ji-seon, have demonstrated love and commitment to the minor child Kang era. A murmur rippled through the room. However, the judge continued, the petition filed by Madame Kang for full custody is hereby denied. Annabel gasped. Ji-seon closed his eyes briefly, his hand finding hers beneath the table, a silent squeeze of shared relief. The judge wasn't finished. Effective immediately, guardianship of the minor child shall remain with her mother, Miss Okafor, while joint visitation and parental rights are granted to Mr. Kang Ji-seon. The words fell like sunlight after years of rain. Annabel's tears came fast, unhidden this time. She turned to Ji-seon. "We did it." He smiled faintly, voice breaking. "No, you did." Across the room, Madame Kang rose slowly, disbelief etched into every line of her face. "Your Honor, you can't." The judge's gavel struck once. This case is closed. For the first time in her life, the matriarch's power meant nothing. Outside, cameras flashed as the family emerged into daylight. Reporters shouted questions, but all Annabel could hear was Era's laughter as she ran toward Ji-seon, arms open. He lifted his daughter effortlessly, holding her as if she were made of light. "Appa," she said proudly, "the judge said I can stay with Mama and you." He laughed softly, tears glistening in his eyes. "That's right. No more secrets." Annabel stood beside them, watching the 2 halves of her heart finally meet. Madame Kang lingered on the courthouse steps, her pearl earrings catching the sunlight. For once, she looked small, not from wealth or age, but from realizing that control couldn't compete with love. When her eyes met Annabel's, there was no anger left, only a weary kind of acceptance. Annabel gave a polite bow before turning away, Era's laughter echoing down the courthouse stairs. And for the first time in 11 years, the air around them felt free. 3 weeks had passed since the verdict, but Seoul still buzzed with the echoes of it. Magazine covers called it the trial that changed Daehan. Talk shows debated whether Kang Ji-seon, once dubbed the ICE CEO, had become a hero or a fool. Annabel ignored it all. Her world had shrunk to something simple again. Morning school runs, late-night research work, and the laughter of her daughter echoing through their apartment. Except now, there was something new. Ji-seon was in that world, too. Every morning, without fail, he arrived at 7:30 a.m. sharp. Era would squeal and race to the door while Annabel pretended not to watch from the kitchen window. He'd braid his daughter's hair, awkwardly, unevenly, and still beam with pride. Then he'd drive them to school together, his once-cold luxury car now cluttered with crayons and snack wrappers. For the first time in years, Annabel caught herself smiling without realizing it. One Friday evening, she opened the door to find Ji-seon holding takeout and a shy grin. "I thought we could celebrate Era's first week back at school," he said. "I didn't burn anything this time." She laughed. "You still remember how to cook instant noodles? I'm a CEO, not a miracle worker." They ate on the balcony as the city lights shimmered below, Era humming softly inside as she colored. The air between them was no longer hostile, just quiet, familiar, alive. "You've changed," Annabel said finally. "So have you," he replied. "You used to argue with me about everything." "I still can," she teased. "I'm just too tired tonight." He smiled, then turned serious. "Thank you for letting me in. I know I don't deserve it, but—" She stopped him gently. "Stop trying to earn it, Ji-seon. Just be consistent. That's what she needs." He nodded slowly, watching the reflection of the city lights in her eyes. And what about you? What about me? Do you need me to be consistent too? For a moment, Annabel couldn't answer. The night air carried memories, ramen and laughter, whispered promises, the ache of goodbye. She met his gaze, soft but sure. Let's start with being friends again. The rest will take time. Ji-seon smiled faintly. Friends. I can do that. Inside, Era's voice broke the moment. Mama, Appa, come see my drawing. They turned together. 3 figures under a bright blue sky, holding hands. Annabel laughed softly. She draws us happier than we deserve. Ji-seon smiled. Maybe she sees what's coming before we do. The gold-embossed envelope arrived on a Thursday morning. Daehan Group Annual Charity Gala, hosted by CEO Kang Ji-seon. Annabel stared at it over breakfast, unsure whether to laugh or panic. You invited me? She asked when Ji-seon stopped by later to drop off Era's school project. I invited both of you, he corrected gently. It's time people see who really matters to me. Ji-seon, that world isn't kind. They'll whisper. Then let them whisper, he said quietly. For once, they'll be right. The night of the gala, the Shilla Hotel's grand ballroom shimmered under crystal chandeliers. Seoul's elite filled the room. Businessmen, politicians, celebrities, all dressed in polished perfection. The cameras at the entrance flashed like lightning, capturing every arrival. Then the murmurs began. She's here. Is that her? Annabel stepped out of the car in a sleek black gown that glowed faintly under the lights, her hair swept into a low bun. Beside her, Era held her hand tightly, wearing a little silver dress and the proudest smile in the room. Ji-seon met them halfway across the red carpet. Gone was the cold executive mask. In its place, warmth and pride radiated through every step. He offered his arm. Shall we? Annabel hesitated, eyes flicking toward the cameras. Are you sure about this? He smiled softly. Completely. Inside, the event unfolded in glittering elegance, soft jazz, champagne glasses, and Seoul's most powerful people pretending not to stare. Madame Kang sat near the front table, her expression unreadable. Ji-seon approached the podium, the spotlight finding him instantly. Good evening, he began. Tonight's event is about compassion, something my daughter reminded me of. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. A few reporters leaned forward. Yes, he continued, his tone calm but resolute. I said daughter. Gasps rippled through the hall. Cameras flashed like fireworks. He gestured toward Annabel and Era at their table. This is my family. They are not a scandal or a secret. They are my strength. For a moment, the room froze. Then applause began, hesitant at first, then stronger, echoing through the ballroom. Annabel blinked back tears as Era clapped proudly beside her. When Ji-seon returned to the table, Annabel whispered, You just declared war on high society. He smiled faintly. Maybe, but it's a war worth winning. Across the room, Madame Kang's gaze met Annabel's, no longer burning with hatred, but something closer to resignation. She lifted her glass in a slow, reluctant toast. And for the first time, Annabel raised hers back. The applause at the gala hadn't even faded before the headlines hit. By morning, Seoul's media was ablaze. Daehan CEO declares love for former mistress in front of society elite. Shareholders panic as Kang dynasty reputation crumbles. Ji-seon scrolled through the articles from his office, every headline cutting deeper. His phone rang endlessly, board members, investors, even international partners demanding explanations. He ignored them all until his secretary entered nervously. Sir, the board is requesting an emergency meeting. He nodded. Let them call it. I'm done hiding. Across town, Annabel sat by the window of her small apartment, watching news clips repeat the moment he'd called her family. Era sat beside her, drawing again. Mama, are people mad at Appa? Yes, Annabel admitted softly. But sometimes doing the right thing makes people angry. Era's brow furrowed. Then we'll clap for him, so he's not sad. Annabel smiled faintly. You're exactly what this world needs, my love. Her phone buzzed, an anonymous message. You don't belong here. Go back where you came from. She exhaled shakily, deleting it before Era could see. She was used to cruelty, but she hadn't expected it to sting so sharply after everything they'd fought for. The Daehan boardroom felt colder than usual. A dozen men sat like judges, their polished pens poised for destruction. Chairman Yi leaned forward. Ji-seon, your personal life has damaged our reputation. Our stock has dropped 4% overnight. Investors are furious. Ji-seon folded his hands. It will recover. The company is stable. You humiliated your mother and exposed the family to scandal, another barked. I told the truth, Ji-seon replied quietly. And I'd do it again. Chairman Yu's tone darkened. Then perhaps you're not fit to lead Daehan anymore. The words hung in the air like thunder. Ji-seon stood slowly. If leadership means living a lie, you're right. I'm not fit for it. He removed his name badge and placed it on the table. But if Daehan falls because its CEO loved honestly, then maybe this company was never as strong as we claimed. He walked out before anyone could stop him, leaving the boardroom stunned into silence. That night, he arrived at Annabel's apartment unannounced. She opened the door to find him looking tired but strangely at peace. You quit, she whispered. I chose us, he said simply. Annabel's eyes glistened. You just gave up everything. He shook his head. No, I finally chose something worth keeping. Era peeked from behind the curtain, beaming when she saw him. Appa's home. Annabel met his gaze and smiled softly. Maybe, for the first time, yes. Spring crept back into Seoul slowly, like a shy guest returning after a long absence. Cherry blossoms lined the Han River again, soft pink clouds swaying in the wind. Annabel stood at the balcony with a mug of tea, watching Era chase bubbles in the courtyard below. For once, the laughter sounded free. No cameras, no courtrooms, no fear. A soft knock came from behind her. She turned to see Ji-seon, sleeves rolled, holding a bouquet of white lilies. You didn't have to bring flowers, she said, amused. He smiled sheepishly. They're not for you. Her brow arched. Oh, they're for Era. I promised her I'd bring some for her science project. Annabel laughed, shaking her head. You're impossible. Persistent, he corrected, stepping beside her to look at the view. The city spread beneath them, golden under the morning sun, alive and full of second chances. In the weeks since his resignation, Ji-seon had done the unthinkable, walked away from the empire his family built and launched his own company, a tech startup focused on medical innovation. He called it Era Tech. It's not about legacy anymore, he told Annabel one evening as they watched Era sleep. It's about purpose, about building something that helps, not hurts. Annabel had seen him change. The ruthless CEO replaced by a man who now drove Era to school, cooked badly on Sundays, and learned to laugh again. Still, she kept her walls high. Love had burned her once. She wasn't sure she could survive it twice. One afternoon, he showed up at the hospital where she worked. Don't panic, he said quickly. I'm not sick. I'm here for a meeting. She eyed him suspiciously. A meeting? With your director, he said, smiling. Aerotech is donating medical tablets to support your research unit. Annabel blinked. You what? He shrugged lightly. You help people. I just wanted to help you do it better. She stared at him for a moment, heart pounding in ways she hadn't felt in years. You're unbelievable, Kang Ji-seon. I'll take that as a compliment, he said with that same boyish grin that used to undo her completely. That night, Annabel found herself replaying every small thing. His patience, his sincerity, his quiet devotion to their daughter. When he called to check on Era before bed, she smiled at the sound of his voice. Ji-seon, she said softly before hanging up. Yes. Thank you for coming back. He paused, the weight of the years between them falling away. I never really left, Annabel. I was just finding my way home. Outside, the cherry blossoms drifted across the night sky like confetti, symbols of endings and beginnings reborn. Summer arrived in Seoul with golden skies and soft winds that smelled of new beginnings. The court battles, headlines, and tears had faded into memory, leaving behind only what mattered, peace. Annabel Okafor stood in the doorway of a modest Han River apartment, sunlight spilling across the floor. Boxes surrounded her, Era's toys, Ji-seon's scattered tech equipment, and a stack of medical journals by the window. The sound of laughter drifted from the living room. Appa, you're doing it wrong. Era giggled. Kang Ji-seon looked up from the floor where he sat, attempting to assemble her new bookshelf. "I'm a CEO," he said defensively, "not a carpenter." Annabel leaned against the doorway, smiling. "You're not a CEO anymore, remember?" He gave her a playful glare. "Thanks for the reminder." Their eyes met, a familiar warmth, no longer haunted by the past. "Just steady, gentle love." When the last box was unpacked, Ji-seon stood beside her at the balcony. From there, they could see the Han River shimmer beneath the afternoon sun, Seoul breathing quietly around them. "I still can't believe you convinced me to move in together," Annabel said softly. "You didn't need much convincing," he teased. Era did most of the work. As if on cue, their daughter ran onto the balcony, waving a crayon drawing in the air. "Look! Our family!" Annabel took the paper, smiling. It showed 3 stick figures, Mama, Appa, and Era, standing beneath a house with the word home written in big, colorful letters. "She said we needed a fresh start," Ji-seon murmured. Annabel looked up at him, voice tender. "You gave us one." He reached for her hand. "No, you gave me one. You taught me that love isn't about status or apology, it's about choosing to stay." She laughed softly. "It only took you 11 years to figure that out." Ji-seon grinned, leaning closer. "Worth every second." For the first time since London, she didn't pull away. Their kiss was gentle, not desperate or rushed, just real. A promise made quietly under Seoul's golden light. Later that evening, they sat together on the floor while Era built a tiny cardboard city beside them. The TV hummed softly with news of Ji-seon's new company, Era Tech, gaining traction as an innovator in medical technology. Annabel rested her head on his shoulder. "So, Mr. Founder, what's next?" He smiled, kissing her forehead. "Dinner first. Life later." Outside, the lights along the river flickered on, stretching like stars across the water. For the first time in years, everything felt exactly where it belonged. They weren't just rebuilding. They were home. Sometimes, love doesn't return in the way we expect. It circles back, older, quieter, wiser. Annabel Okafor didn't set out to change anyone's world. She only wanted to protect her daughter. But somehow, in fighting for Era, she reminded everyone, even the coldest hearts, what love truly looks like. And Kang Ji-seon, the man who once believed success was measured by power and prestige, learned that real success begins when you kneel to braid your daughter's hair and choose truth over empire. The world that once whispered behind their backs now watches in silence, not because of scandal, but because something rare survived the storm: forgiveness. Tonight, the lights of Seoul shine softer over the Kang household. No longer a tower of secrets, but a home filled with laughter, warm tea, and the sound of a child's dreams. Annabel stands on the balcony, city wind brushing her face. Ji-seon joins her, hand finding hers, no words needed. Below them, the Han River carries away the past. And with it, every moment that almost broke them. Because in the end, love wasn't about perfection or fairy tales. It was about coming home to the people who see you, even after the world stops looking. Thank you so much for staying with us till the very end of the story. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and leave a comment below. We'd love to hear the lessons you learned and your thoughts on how we can continue improving to give you the very best. Here at Munlyt Stories, every tale is crafted with passion, care, and dedication. Our mission is simple: to entertain, inspire, and connect us all across cultures and hearts. So, keep the conversation alive in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new episode. Till next time, we are Munlyt Stories, bringing you amazing tales that touch hearts and spark imaginations. Stay blessed, stay inspired. See you in the next story.